So your week has been a long week.
Yes, it's been a long week. That's a way to put it.
Why?
Well, the first part of the week I was sick. I still kind of felt kind of sick, actually. It was just I had a bunch of unexpected expenses, so things got tight again. And ironically, I had like a big communication problem, so maybe I'll have to tell a little bit about that. I found myself in a challenging communication situation this week.
So I'm just getting ready a little bit for the podcast. Yeah, my week's been pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I've had to have more care than I normally have. And the thing is, what weeks like this make me realize that, being paralyzed is only 5% of it,
Yeah.
Okay, you can't walk. That must suck. No, it's everything that goes with the not ability to walk.
Yeah. I feel that way
Professional.
about my migraines. People
Yeah.
think, oh, it's just a bad headache. It's so much more than that. I get sick to my stomach. I get dizzy. I get kind of foggy headed. I get impatient.
And then you can't get done what you plan to get done. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one of the harder things, apart from what you have to do. Is not easy having carers not cleaning up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you plan a day and you go, right, let's get on and do this. And then you lose a day, you lose hours. And it's not like as if we've got like endless amount of time.
Right.
We haven't got enough time to do all the stuff we want to do anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
Without having to randomly just take 6 hours out.
Yeah, right. People tell me all the time when I'm out with a migraine, they're like, what are you doing out? Why are you here? You should be in bed. And I'm like, you know what? If I did that every time I had a migraine, I would never do anything. I would never get anything done. I have to push through it.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like to have a migraine. Talking about relationship and communication, but I used to see somebody and she used to get migraines and her little boy used to get migraines.
Yeah.
And I used to see them in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I used to pretty much think the arrogance of me. Never had a migraine in my life, but of course I thought I knew what it was like.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, it's just a headache.
Yeah.
Until I seen that little boy screaming and I realized, oh, it's not just
No, it's super, super painful.
So we're talking about communication.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing we need to communicate to our partner.
Oh, yeah.
It's about how things affect us as opposed to what it's doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The headache is the result. But how does it affect us? How does it make us feel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like my head hurts today because I didn't get enough sleep last night.
So in our usual fashion, I turn up with loads and loads of notes and you don't have any.
Right?
No, for the regular listeners, they all know I turn up with no notes. And Susan saves the day.
Oh, see, that's why we balance each other. You like to wing it and be spontaneous, and I like to be prepared. So we balance each other.
Oh, I never thought that. So you're giving me permission to never research for a show again.
I guess I am.
Deal. Let's get married. You can prepare for the relationship. You can do all of that, and I'll just wing it.
Yeah.
I'll just wing it. That's the male and female in us, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I used to wing it through most of my life, and it never really worked out real well for me. So I decided to start planning.
Isn't it funny? I wing it more now, and I'm more relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how it works out.
So good.
So what have you got for me?
For you?
For us. So what have you got for us?
Last week, we talked about why communication is so important for relationships. This week, we wanted to actually get into some specific things that you can do to help improve your communication skills, help you fight fair. Talk about active listening. I definitely want to talk about active listening.
Yeah, we briefly touched upon how important it is and the decent communication. And
Yeah.
we were talking about the 3 parts of communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
The active, there's talking,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how to talk, communicate effectively what you're
Yeah.
really feeling as opposed to the story you're thinking.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The listening
Mm-hmm.
without having your own judgments and your own experiences based in it.
Yeah.
And then finally, I've missed one, am I? The listening. And then the understanding.
Yes. Yes.
Finally, the actual understanding, I was going to say properly, just genuinely.
Yeah. Empathy.
And that's it. Podcast over.
Yeah. No, and and it's not just, we talk a lot about, like, romantic relationships and partnerships, but these skills apply everywhere, as I, kind of reminded myself this week, because I had, a communication issue with someone who I just have to deal with in a business sense. Like, they're not a friend, they're not family, but someone that I need to be, like, respectful and professional with. And I feel it should be vice versa. And we had some bad communication with each other. And then I realized, like, I was talking to my friend last night, and I realized, um, the reason why I was so bothered was because my pride was hurt. My pride was hurt, and I felt like I needed to be shown an amount of respect that I wasn't being given. Um, and and I realized, I needed to, like, work toward resolution. But I've been working on communication for a long, 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 long time. It used to be really hard for me with my dyslexia. I realized it was causing me problems. So I started looking at where I'm having trouble, where I need to improve. And I still mess up. I still make mistakes. I still struggle, especially when I'm dealing with someone who, doesn't care about how well they're communicating, which is actually one of the things that I think really needs to be a factor in good communication, is that both people are looking for resolution and are trying to grow, and communicate better. Like, that's
Yeah.
an essential element.
Yeah. What are you doing here? Are you here to listen to me when I've got
Mm-hmm.
something to say? Are you here to explain to me and talk to me
Mm-hmm.
from what you've got to say to me? Because
Yeah.
unless we're both in it,
Yeah.
mutually in it to communicate,
Yeah.
why bother?
And yeah, and that's the thing. That's probably what you run into the most when you're having bad communication. But there are things that you can do to disarm a person. There are things that you can do to get them back on the page of resolution. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are
So,
handy things to learn.
so let's start with the first part of communication. How do we, let's take the very common example, and I've experienced this a lot in my life, although I've been on the receiving end.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a relationship, you're not been listened to, you're fed up, you're tired. The same old thing is happening again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's got to the stage where everything is just doing your head in, from
Yeah.
leaving cups out to not hanging the washing out to,
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know, anything, coming in late from work and all that. How do you
Right.
communicate that to your partner to say, look, this is what's going on?
Well, the thing is you've got to go into it with a resolution in mind, which means you've got to know what's really wrong, what's really bothering you. So in that situation, the best thing to do is just sit down by yourself, write, journal, just get all your thoughts out and figure out what is the underlying core theme of how you're feeling. Like, really get down to what's really bothering you, and then think about, well, how do I want to see that resolved? And then come to the person with that resolution in mind.
Yeah, getting below the actual story is really important.
Mm-hmm. Super
Um,
important.
I talk about story a lot and what's below the story.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by story is the story is what's happening.
Yeah.
That's the result of not communicating, the result of not thinking, not caring, not
Yeah.
thing. But it isn't that you want to communicate. It's not the fact that they're doing this again and day in and day out. It's when you sit down and go below that, you realize it's about respect. It's about, you're not listening to me. What am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
I've told you about this again and again. You're just not hearing it. And you feel abused, and you feel just, I'm trying to think of another word apart from lack of respect.
Unheard. Unheard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone wants to be heard.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is you've got to like voice your grievance in the best way possible. You really have to frame it, because if you
Yeah.
come off like you're attacking the other person, if you come off like you're feeling defensive, if you're not calm and clear about what you want to say, and don't talk about how you're feeling, and take personal responsibility, you're going to set the whole conversation in a defensive direction.
Yeah.
So
So,
framing it.
so the framing it is,
For example,
so when is the best time to communicate? How do we know when to say what we want to say?
yeah. Well, it's really super important for you to go into the conversation in the right frame of mind, and recognize when it's actually a good thing to put off the resolution and take some time. Like if you're tired, if either of you is tired, if either of you is stressed, hungry, emotional, defensive, um,
Hungry is a huge one.
yeah, hungry. Yeah, but because half the battle is just going into it with the right frame of mind. Like
Yeah.
that is half the battle right there.
You're not interested in solving it. If you approach it when you're mad, or when they're angry, or
Yeah.
when something's bottling you up, although you want a resolution, you're not interested in resolution. You're interested in digging, getting them back,
Yeah.
to have a
Yeah.
go, to, you want to
Yeah.
make your point, but really you just want to get it off your chest.
Yeah.
That's not the way to get things done,
No,
not the way
no.
to communicate.
It's super, super important to have control over your emotions so that you're going to be open to hear the other person's point of view.
Yeah. And
Super
this stops
important.
us going into story of like, oh, well, 6 months ago you did this, and
Hmm.
6 months ago you did that,
Yeah.
because all those little things are not relevant. It's relevant to how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, find a time when you're both feeling relatively in a
Yeah.
good frame of mind.
Hmm.
Maybe you've had a good day out, maybe it's the weekend, maybe, and get rid of distractions.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Go and say to your partner, perhaps, look, I'm going to go and make a cup of coffee.
Hmm.
Um, can we just sit down and have some time together for 20
Hmm.
minutes before that program comes on later?
Yeah. And instead of saying like I have a problem, say I need your help with something. I'm trying to figure something out.
That's huge.
Yeah. And,
Um,
and and honestly, on a side note, you said the thing about, oh, you did this 6 months ago, you did this 5 months ago. Never say that.
no, no.
Never say that, because what happened in the past doesn't matter. You're still there. You accepted what happened in the past. Focus on the moment. Focus on the problem at hand. Because
Yeah.
if you're bringing up things in the past, they're going to be instantly defensive.
It comes down to what you want.
Yeah.
Do you want them to hurt? Do you want them to get their back up to you? Do you want them to be annoyed? Well, if you do, go into story, point
Mm-hmm.
fingers,
Yep.
poke at them, dig at them, all you like. You're not going to get anything that way.
No.
And you
Mm-mm.
won't feel better in the long run. You might think
No.
you will, but you won't.
No, you won't.
If you're still invested in the relationship, you want them to understand, and you want to help them, and you want them to be happy.
Oh,
In
yeah.
return,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm having a problem, trying to figure something out. I need your help. Could
yeah,
we sit down and talk about it together? Because I would really like X, Y, and Z.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I like what you just said. Can you help me? And you can go further with that. I say, look, can you help me? I'm really suffering at the moment, and
yeah,
and this is what I'm suffering from. I know it's me, and I know it's how I'm feeling, but can you help me?
yeah, yeah,
And you, if you approach it from that point of view, you get a totally different response. For a start, they
absolutely.
may actually listen, because the other person doesn't want to make your life worse.
Yeah,
If it's got to that stage, move on.
Right. Yeah.
But in general, the other person doesn't want to make your life worse.
Right.
So you're giving them the opportunity to improve your life. You're giving them the opportunity to love you
Mm-hmm.
by helping you to
Yeah.
sort out some of the things you're thinking.
Yeah. And you know that sounds like it's probably difficult to do, but if you really sit down and actually prepare for the conversation, figure out what's really bothering you, what point you want to get across, think about how you can approach it from the right frame of mind, and then have the conversation. Yeah, you're going to forget half of what you wanted to say, and you're probably going to mess it up, but it's still going to be so much better than in the moment when you are going to be nervous, upset, angry. Like those feelings are going to be there as much as you try to push them down. If
Yeah.
you prepare a little bit, you'll have a goal in mind.
And if you get into the practice of starting a sentence with, I feel,
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like you're disrespecting me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're not there for me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're separating and it's not something I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and if you come at it from, I want you to, from now on, you were
Yeah.
this, or
Yeah.
you have done this, you have done that. If we think about every time that someone said any of those things to us, what happens?
Yeah.
We immediately, hairs on the back of our neck stand up. We're ready to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh,
how
yeah.
dare you?
Yeah. You feel
And
unappreciated. You feel very unappreciated. And that's not a motivating thing to get someone to do something.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the word, unappreciated.
Unappreciated.
I,
Because what do? You immediately go, oh, what? I did this and I did this and I did this. Like, don't those things mean anything? You
yeah,
immediately start checking off your list because you feel
I,
unappreciated.
I cannot believe you treated me this way after I've done this, this, and this, and this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go down that route.
No.
Did you do it for love, for them to love you, or did you do it because you love them? Now, if it's the latter, it doesn't have to come up.
Yeah.
Now, and if you did it for them to do things for you, you got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we,
Well, here's the thing. It's really, really important to see your own responsibility in the situation. And, like nothing happens in a vacuum. You both contributed in some way to the problem. No one's necessarily right or wrong. So if you can look at the situation and see where your responsibility is in it, you're going to be calmer, you're going to be less angry. And if you tell your partner that, that's going to make them feel more open to saying, okay, yeah, like I was kind of responsible for this too. Let's fix this.
yeah. And you can always start by asking them a question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm feeling a little fed up at the moment. I'm feeling a little tired at the moment. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
I see you're working lots of hours at the moment and you're doing overtime in the evening and all that. How are you feeling about all that?
Oh, yeah.
And then they can tell you, and then you can say, well, this is the way I'm feeling about it.
Yeah.
We don't
Nice.
need the money. We don't need this. And I would rather have more time with you than you working till 10 o'clock every night.
Nice. Yeah. Yep.
That kind of thing. And because it is really a two-way street.
It is.
And more so the listening and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So when we communicate from the heart as to what's below all the story, I cannot say it enough, stay out of story.
Mm-hmm.
You did this, I did that, you did this, why did you do that to me? And if we make the communication about how can we improve the other person's part in this relationship,
Yeah.
i.e., how can I make it happier for them?
Mm-hmm.
They, in return, will try to make it happier for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Lead by
So,
example.
yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is.
If you want to be listened to, you gotta.
Listen. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to the listening.
Oh, yeah.
How do we listen?
Um, it's really important, I think, at this point to kind of distinguish between listening and active listening. Because a lot of people think they're listening. They think they hear what someone's saying, but
Yeah.
especially in the heat of a moment, people tend to naturally start thinking about how they want to respond to what you're saying, how they're going to prove you wrong, how they're going to defend themselves, how they're going to
Yeah.
explain why something happened. And active listening is about really focusing on the other person when they're talking and what they're saying and taking it in, and, like repeating back to them that you understand. This is your chance to show them you want to understand them and you're listening so that they will do the same for you. And it's, you repeat back what you think they said. It's a great tool for getting clarity on what's really going on, because neither of you can read each other's minds. You don't know everything that's going on in each other's lives, in each other's heads, in each other's feelings. And it really promotes getting all that stuff out and opening up.
We don't know what's in the other person's mind, but many times in relationships, we think we do.
Yeah, we think we know them so well.
Yeah.
But you never know what's in someone's heart or
And
in someone's head.
no, and we think we know them so well that when they don't live up to the expectations of what we think they should know, we're really
Mm-hmm.
mad with them.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
whose fault is that?
Right. Exactly.
If you're expecting them to be a certain way and you have not communicated that with them,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's your fault, not theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Personal responsibility.
yeah, I think we spoke about that on about the 5th podcast, didn't we?
We've talked about, yeah.
Talked about it a few times, but
I think we
yeah,
talked about active listening too, but
yeah. The other part of active listening is totally taking yourself out of it.
mm-hmm.
When you're listening, it's all about what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the easiest things that I found with listening is to, when they're telling you something, imagine what it feels like if you were having that happen to you.
Yeah.
So if someone says to you, well, I don't feel respected, feel what it's like not to be respected.
Yeah.
And then you can understand what they're trying to tell you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the big part of the active listening, is
Yeah.
actually feeling and experiencing what they're telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if that's a difficult thing for you to do and you're just getting started doing it, if you need to, just say, okay, let me take like 5 minutes break, and then let's pick this back up. And then sit there and try to imagine yourself feeling how you would feel
Good
if the
point.
same thing happened to you. Like, and then come back. You'll come back with a totally different perspective.
Yeah. And you can lay some of these ground rules out and
Oh
say,
yeah.
look, I don't, can we sit down and talk? I'm feeling a certain way at the moment, and I'm wondering if you could help me to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know how you're feeling, and I want
Mm-hmm.
you to bring hopefully some clarity to how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But if this gets a bit much or we're getting a bit confused, would you mind if we took 5 minutes out
Oh yeah.
rather than it get heated?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
Absolutely.
you set those ground rules beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
nobody minds.
Yeah.
And also the other thing that
Another good
uh,
rule, another good rule you can do, I've seen a lot of people do this, is where you basically, before you get into the conversation, you ask them, is this a good time to talk? And
yeah,
if they
very
say
much.
no, they're expected to say, but let's talk tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
Uh, so, like, setting
And
up
be
rules
okay
where you
with,
allow each other space to be ready is like super important.
yeah, and be absolutely okay with that.
And yeah,
If they
be okay
say
with
no,
that.
tomorrow's a better day, be absolutely okay with that.
Yep.
Um, if you ask a question, be okay with their answer.
Yeah,
Don't expect an answer beforehand.
absolutely.
The other ground rule you could set out is a time limit.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to say there's nothing worse than talking for 5 hours, but there is worse things in the world.
Yeah.
For me, Marmite, that's worse. I just don't like Marmite.
Well, you don't want to be arguing for a long time if you're still arguing, because it's okay to disagree, but if you're arguing for 5 hours, you're not getting anywhere. It's not a good time.
No, and you end up going around the same house
Yep, go in
again and
circles.
again and again.
Yep, that's the perfect
So
time to say,
stick
let's take a
some
break and
time
try this.
limit. Yeah. So perhaps before a TV program that's coming on in 30 minutes or something like that, depending on how much you want to talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
set it to, and don't talk for more than an hour about something like this.
Yeah, there's really no need for that.
You know, you have whole countries that are run by emergency teams that do not meet more than an hour
Yeah,
because it becomes unproductive.
right, exactly.
If you cannot communicate what's going on effectively between two people in under an hour,
Mm-hmm.
somebody isn't listening or somebody isn't
Right.
communicating properly.
Yeah.
So set a time to it. You know, look, can we sit
Yeah.
down and talk for 20 minutes?
And if you get to the point where you realize, hey, this is not productive, don't feel bad. Don't beat yourself up. Just be aware of it and stop
Yeah.
and figure out how to proceed forward. Give yourself some time, whatever you need to do. But yeah, like pay attention to that. If you pay attention to that,
Yeah.
you'll start catching it quicker and quicker and quicker.
And also say to them, look, I'm not asking for you to solve all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I just want some clarity for myself, and can you help me with that?
Yeah.
So you're not looking at a solution within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because for me, when someone comes to me with a problem, my natural response is to try to jump to, right, okay, how do I fix it? How long have I got?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay not to have a resolution in that time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some things don't even need it. They just need to be heard, need to be able to be said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it comes to the last component of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And we briefly spoke about it with the listening, with the being able to put yourselves in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
God, I got something in my throat now.
Do you have water?
I do. I can't cough. That's my problem.
I think in order to achieve understanding, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be open and honest and vulnerable.
I think you're right. I was waiting for you to carry on. I think you're absolutely bang on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I was gonna. It wasn't something initially in my mind about the last part. Yeah, when you sit down to communicate, be absolutely open and vulnerable to whatever comes up.
Yeah, yeah. And that is definitely, I mean, that's not an easy task, but that is like really, I think the key to productive, healthy communication is even though it's really hard, you've got to open up, talk about how you feel, talk
Yeah.
about, this isn't working for you've got to be vulnerable and totally open and totally honest.
Right. I didn't want to cough in your ear.
Mm.
I thought about something just for.
And you have to be, and you know what? Here's the other thing. It's not just about you opening up and saying what you want. You have to be emotionally trustworthy. You know, well, like avoiding saying things like, I'm done. I want a divorce. Let's end this. You might get attention in the moment, but you're going to ruin the trust that they need to open up to you.
Yeah.
If they tell you something that you don't like, you have got to be okay with it. I mean, that doesn't mean you agree with it. You're allowed to disagree,
Yeah.
but you have to appreciate the fact that they opened up and they told you, and this is how they feel. And if you were in their shoes, you would want that respect. You have to show them the respect that you want to receive. That's being emotionally trustworthy.
Yeah, and also if you have genuinely listened to them, listened to their concerns, mirrored back those concerns, and
Mm-hmm.
got clarity on those concerns. So you've gone like, well, you're saying you're frustrated. Can you explain more about that? I'm not quite understanding what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it comes to your turn to speak,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to abide by the same rules,
Yep.
but also you'll be listened to. And
Yeah.
it's okay to say, well, I disagree and here's why,
Mm-hmm.
but do it from the heart. I
Yeah.
feel like I do respect you. I do appreciate you. And
Yeah.
here's why.
Yeah.
Because very often the other person that feels unappreciated, the other person probably has no idea that they're doing that.
Yeah.
Um, and it might be that one person's looking at where they're not being appreciated, and another person is looking at where they are appreciated, and they're two totally different places.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That made me think of a really cool, I think, analogy for listening versus active listening. Active listening is not listening with your ears; it's listening with your heart.
yeah, absolutely. It's being present while listening,
Yep.
bringing all of you.
Yep.
Whereas we very often bring the TV, distractions, something else, the phone.
Mm-hmm.
The phone's got to be on silent, out the
Oh
room,
yeah.
put it away.
Absolutely. Yep. Put it away.
Get rid of the kids, you know, send the kids to another country for a couple of hours. Um, so they cannot interrupt you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is important to be uninterrupted.
It is. Yeah.
And there is, you can use the Indian talking stick as well.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to briefly go into this, and then I want to talk about how do we get back to love when we do let things bottle up and we do say the things that we don't want to say,
Yeah.
because we do sometimes.
Well, I think we said we were going to do a whole podcast on that, weren't we?
Were we?
Yeah.
Okay, let's not do the back to love. Let's do. Have you ever heard of the Indian talking stick?
Yes.
Do you want me to explain?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to leave it to you though. I was going to put you on the spot. The Indian talking stick is basically you have any kind of stick or a pen or anything, and you're holding it. And while you're holding it, you are the only one allowed to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And you give that stick away when you feel completely understood.
Mm-hmm.
But the Indian talking stick, it has to be agreed with everybody that's involved.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either do it around a campfire with a group of people, or you can do it as just you and them. But
Yeah.
you both sit down and say, right, while one of us has got the stick, the other person is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm satisfied, or when the talker with the stick is satisfied, the other person understands fully,
Well,
then the other person
see,
gets the stick.
I think I have to disagree actually, because I think that the person, if they're handing the stick off when they're done talking, really they're just being heard. They feel heard, but that doesn't mean they're understood yet, because the other person might need to ask some questions. They
Oh, the
might.
other person can clarify.
Yes, to me, I feel like it works better if it does go back and forth so that you can
Yeah.
ask clarifying questions, show through your words that you do understand.
Yeah. Let me clarify a little more then.
Mm-hmm.
While you've got the stick, the other person can clarify what you're saying. Are you saying this? Are you clarifying?
Okay.
But they're not
Okay.
allowed to bring what they want to their
Yeah.
side into it.
Yeah.
And the reason why the person holding the stick is the one to give it away
Mm-hmm.
is because they can only give it away when they feel that they've been listened and understood,
Cool. I
not
like
when they
that.
finish talking.
Yeah. See, I've always heard it that way.
Yeah, it's completely different. Not when they finish talking.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like that.
It's easy to talk, then give the stick away.
Yeah.
Means nothing.
Exactly.
The key to it is when they feel fully understood.
Nice.
then it might not be they totally, but it's had the feeling,
Right. Yeah.
or fully heard, you might say, rather than understood.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you to do the same to the other person.
Yeah.
But you can clarify. You can go
Okay,
explain this.
cool. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like asking questions, I think is more powerful than just explaining what
It
you
is,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pause for 3 seconds. When somebody finishes talking, it doesn't work on a podcast so much. But when somebody stops talking, wait at least 3 seconds before you throw
Yeah.
your sense in,
Oh,
because
yeah.
very often they'll continue. They're just thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also too, like when you do that, when you fully listen to them and then you take a few seconds to just think before you speak, people are afraid to do that because they're afraid, oh, I'm going to forget this thing that they said and this thing they said and this thing. But when you're doing that, you're getting all focused on the details. If you hear the whole thing and then wait and then think about what you want to say,
Yeah.
your mind's going to jump right to what's the most important thing to you.
Yeah. You could ask the other person to recognize when I'm going into story, and please, can you point that out to me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I'm sweating the little stuff, can you please point that back out to me?
Yeah.
But then if you do that, you've got to be vulnerable and ready for when they say, hey, you're in story. You
Yeah.
wanted me to point that out to you.
Yeah.
None of this is easy,
No, it's not, but
and
it's
it
worth
takes
it.
practice.
It's
And
so
it,
worth it.
massively worth it. It's the difference of having a real incredible relationship
Yeah.
with a colleague, a child, your spouse, or anybody, or having a relationship where you'd rather talk to your friends and moan about them as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to sort things out.
Oh, yeah.
And I know everybody would prefer to be able to have a communication with, in effect, their best friend
Yeah.
than go to other people.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but it's not easy. And you mentioned about vulnerability earlier on. It is a real brave thing to sit down and do what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not because you're criticizing the other person and you're worried you're going to upset them. It's not that. It's because you're open to what they might say back.
Yeah. That's very hard. But you know what? It gets easier and
Yeah.
easier and easier. And it's not long before you can feel how much, I mean, when I first started, like, putting all these kind of active listening things into effect, I swear the difference was immediate. I noticed an immediate difference.
Yeah.
I didn't always do it right. I messed up a lot. It took practice, but I noticed a big difference immediately.
I did as well. One of the first things, I wrote a couple of blog posts about it about 3 years ago. 13 steps to be a better listener, and the 4 active steps of listening. I can't remember. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first learned to, I thought I was always a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
realized
did
quickly
I.
I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately people opened up to me. People were like, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know anything about this with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize for years that I just wasn't listening to them.
Yeah.
I was listening to reply.
Yeah.
But it does get easier, like you say,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's
It
not
gets
easy.
easier. Yeah.
Um, I know we're going to talk about this later on, how to get back to love when things go wrong. But I do want to, for this podcast, just touch upon, if you do sit down and you do have every intention, and then we end up in a situation where we said a few things that we didn't plan on saying, but we took it a bit personally and we went too
Yeah. Yeah.
far. To me, the next step I would be is I would look up and say, look, can we have an hour out?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Take some time out,
Mm-hmm.
no more than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Message to all the guys out there, don't sulk for 2 years
Yeah.
or 2 days. But come back in an hour's time and carry on the discussion.
Yeah.
Um,
And
then
honestly, I think it's really important to like take some personal responsibility, like when you come back, like right off the bat. Like, even if you feel like you're in the right, it's okay to say, I'm sorry I've upset you. I'm sorry
yeah,
that you're angry. Use some disarming techniques to start things off.
and don't say I'm sorry, but I'm right. I'm sorry, but
Right.
it's your fault. Just say I'm sorry because I should not have said that, and stop.
And I
Don't say
don't
I
want to,
should not have
yeah,
said that, but you should not have done this,
yeah.
because we remember the final thing that's said to us,
Mm-hmm.
the final bit in the sentence. So if you say I'm sorry, I should not have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But
are you
da da
okay
da da
with
da
my apology?
da.
Yeah. But
Yep.
the minute you say a but,
Mm-hmm.
you may as well have not been sorry. Don't say it.
Yep.
Don't
Oh
bother.
yeah. Yep. Yep. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's a
Replace
super hard habit to break too.
replace but with and.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, and I will try not to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Not I'm sorry, but you forced me to say that because
Right.
and it's the one thing that's really difficult to do with the active listening is to not take it personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they're talking from their feelings, they're their feelings, not yours.
Yeah.
And I cannot emphasize that enough. They may be completely different to your feelings,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean they're wrong.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah.
That's all I got on that. It's different feelings. It's their feelings, and if they're
Yeah.
talking from their feelings, you have to accept those feelings as absolute truth because it is to them.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You're both coming to it from your own reality, and you both see things from your own perspective. And part of understanding each other is being able to see their perspective and accept that even if their perspective is different, it's their perspective.
Yeah, and be okay with it being messy to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Say, look, this will and will not work. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. It will be a process, and you could always ask them to listen to this podcast on the way to work.
Right. Yeah. There
Hey,
you
I've
go.
listened to the podcast. You ought to go listen to it.
Oh, you know what? I had another thing. This is kind of going to sound like it's off subject, but I had one more thing I wanted to say too. When you're talking, pay attention to body language. Um, you can tell when you're talking to someone by their body language if they're open to listening to your point of view or if they're defensive, if they are slouching, if they've got their arms crossed, if they don't want to look at you. These are all very defensive mannerisms. This is
Yeah,
where you need to disarm them by taking responsibility for your own feelings and opening up to them or asking them, is this a good time? Like, and just letting them know you just want to resolve it. You're not angry or whatever.
yeah,
And now if they're, turned towards you, looking at you, looking in your eyes, and their arms are like open, like literally open, they are open and they are open to what you have to say. And that's the perfect time to have these
yeah.
conversations.
And find a neutral place,
Yeah.
not your childhood favorite place where you like to go for a walk, and not theirs. If you can find a bit difficult in an office situation, but if you
Hmm.
can find a neutral place where you can both go, and although you said to look at each other when you're talking,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
don't face each other
Yeah.
directly, because if you do, the body takes that as a natural attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best thing you can do
I
if
think
you're
it's good
in,
to sit next to each other. I think it's good to sit right next to each other and just kind of turn toward each other
yeah,
when you're
but
talking.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It's good for a meal as well.
Hmm.
If you go to a restaurant, find a table next to a window, and both of you sit there facing the window and talk about what you can see and have a
Hmm.
discussion about looking out together. And I would encourage this in any communication as well. Get out of your house, get out of your place. If you're really going to do this and you want to take it really seriously and really make an impact, go and find a place on a bench somewhere, face the same way, talk about things, and then make a point. Right, okay, let's have this discussion now. Let's have a chat, and it will make a difference because both of you aren't feeling closed in. You're in neutral territory.
Yeah. You'll be more relaxed and more at ease.
Yeah. And it will change so much being able to have this voice.
Yeah.
In a relationship, there's a person with the voice, and there's the person with the feelings. And they have to, I was going to say collide, but it's not so much they collide, they have to form a bond somehow. So the one with the loudest voice has to find the feelings. The one with the feelings have to find their voice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And the opposite goes. The one with the loudest voice has to allow the other person to have a voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And the one with all the feelings has to allow the other person to have feelings.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's really important.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That gave me goosebumps.
Newsflash, even narcissists have feelings.
Yes, they do.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Honestly, I used to have all sorts of strong feelings about narcissists, but now I recognize that they're just super insecure. They're actually probably more wounded than most people think they are. Like they're so insecure. That's how it comes out.
They're protecting themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and when we see things like that, it disarms them.
Yeah, yeah.
And they never really never really had weapons. The weapons we made up inside of ourselves.
Yeah,
that's going deep into like the way we perceive people and everything.
Yeah.
Where can they find you, Susan?
You can find me at susansinspirationspace.com.
And you can find me on stephenwebb.com. And do you mind me promoting my 21 days to your inner peace?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
In October, we're starting 21 days to find your inner peace challenge. And you can sign up on my website, stephenwebb.com, spelled with a V. There'll be a link underneath this podcast. But we're going to step through the 5 simple practices you need to do to have more peace, be more in touch with your feelings, have better sleep, more energy.
Ooh, I could use that. I'm not joking.
Well, I'm one of those spiritual teachers that think sleep is a fundamental part of spiritualism.
Yeah.
How can you meditate without falling asleep? How can you have real gratitude if you're so tired you can barely function?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So we're going to sort out the meditation practice, just 10 minutes a day in the morning. We're going to sort out the sleep. We're going to sort out the gratitude practices, the attachment issues, the accepting and letting go. And finally, we're going to sort out the mindfulness and how we bring it all to the everyday world.
Wow. Nice.
It's going to be good. And it's completely free. You'll have access to me. It'll be videos and live shows from me.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing it as a community.
Yeah. That sounds really awesome.
Head over to stephenwebb.com and there's a great big button right at the top. So what are we talking about next week?
I have no idea.
Okay, we'll cut that bit out.
But also don't forget to come check us out on Patreon and support our podcast.
One sec. Just yeah, we weren't going to say Patreon, were we? Don't forget to check us. You say it. Check us out on flipitrebuildit.com.
Oh yeah, we're gonna send them there. Okay.
It's really difficult on the spot.
It is. It really is. Like I'm out of the flow now. Like we're
having a discussion now where to send you all. So
Yeah.
we're going to
Okay.
send you to flipitandrebuildit.com.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And there you can find all the different places you can find our podcast, our episodes from last season, and also you can find a link to our Patreon site where you can support our free podcast, help us
And
buy
watch our videos.
more equipment. So, and our videos. Yes, we have behind the scenes YouTube videos. All of last season is available, and we'll start putting this season's up pretty soon. But yeah, that's where we don't cut out all the goofy stuff we do, and you get to hear all the behind the scenes and you get to see us.
I
So
hope you
check
cut
that
some
out.
of it out.
A little, but I try not to. I try to leave as I yeah, I really try not to.
No, it's good.
If there's like a huge gap, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna cut out this big gap.
Or if I'm choking or something.
Right, right.
So thank you, Susan.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
see you next week, Monday
Yeah,
morning.
sounds good.